The air in Detroit's east side carried the weight of rust and resignation, a neighborhood where crumbling brick houses stood like sentinels of forgotten dreams. It was March 2025, and the city's economic slump had tightened its grip, leaving families like Maya Jackson's clinging to survival. At 18, Maya lived with her mother, Ruth, in a drafty second-floor apartment on Mack Avenue, its peeling paint a testament to years of neglect. She was a wiry girl with deep brown eyes that held a quiet intensity, her braids pulled back in a practical bun. By day, she worked odd jobs delivering newspapers, stocking shelves at the corner store, but at night, she pored over library books on law, her secret passion. She'd never told anyone, not even Ruth, who'd raised her alone after Maya's father vanished into the prison system a decade ago. In this part of town, dreaming too big got you laughed at or worse. That evening, the sky bruised purple as Maya climbed the creaky stairs home, her arms full of groceries Ruth had sent her to fetch. She paused on the landing, her breath catching at the sound of shouting below. Down on the cracked sidewalk, Mrs. Lena Carter, a gray-haired widow who'd lived next door for 20 years, was pleading with two men in stiff suits. A police officer loomed nearby, arms crossed, his badge glinting under the streetlight. "I paid every dime," Lena cried, clutching a wad of crumpled receipts. "You can't do this." One of the suits, a thin man with a clipboard, smirked. "Lease violation, ma'am. You're out by morning." The cop stepped forward, hand on his belt, silencing her protest with a glare. Maya's stomach twisted. She knew Lena knew. Her arthritis made her slow. Knew she baked cornbread for the kids on the block when she could afford it. This wasn't right. She'd heard whispers about Greystone Realty, the company that owned half the buildings here, pushing out black tenants to make room for wealthier renters. Redlining might have been illegal, but its ghost still haunted Detroit, and people like Lena were the casualties. Maya slipped inside, dropping the groceries on the kitchen table where Ruth sat, hunched over bills. "Mama, they're evicting Mrs. Lena," Maya said, voice low but urgent. Ruth's tired eyes flicked up, lines deepening on her forehead. "Ain't our business, baby. You know how it goes round here, stick your neck out, and it gets chopped." Maya bit her lip, the words stinging. Ruth wasn't wrong. She'd seen friends harassed by cops or landlords for speaking up. But as she lay in bed that night, Lena's sobs echoing in her mind, Maya couldn't let it go. She crept to her desk, pulled out Lena's lease borrowed days ago to help her read the fine print, and flipped on a lamp. The law book stacked beside her glowed faintly in the dark. Maybe, just maybe, she could fight this. The next morning, Maya woke with a fire in her chest she couldn't douse. The image of Mrs. Lena's trembling hands clutching those receipts had seared itself into her mind. She slipped out before Ruth stirred, the dawn air sharp against her skin, and headed to the library 3 blocks away. The Detroit Public Library's East Branch was a sanctuary of cracked linoleum and flickering lights, but its shelves held treasures, dog-eared law books Maya had claimed as her own private tutors. She pulled landlord-tenant law in Michigan from the stack, her fingers tracing the worn spine, and settled into a corner table. Hours bled into each other as she scribbled notes, cross-referencing Lena's lease with state statutes. By noon, she'd found it. Greystone Realty's eviction notice cited a noise violation, but Lena's payment records were spotless. The violation smelled like a lie, a flimsy excuse to clear her out. Back home, Maya knocked on Lena's door, heart pounding. The old woman answered, eyes red-rimmed, a suitcase half-packed beside her. "Child, what you doing here?" Lena rasped. Maya held up her notes. "I think they're breaking the law, Mrs. Lena. I can help you fight." This. Lena's brow furrowed, doubt creasing her face, but she nodded. "I ain't got much left to lose." That night, Maya typed a letter on Ruth's ancient laptop, her words sharp and formal. Cease and desist the eviction of Lena Carter, or face legal action for wrongful termination of tenancy. She mailed it to Greystone Realty's downtown office, a sleek glass tower that loomed over the city like a vulture. 2 days later, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Maya Jackson?" a voice sneered, smooth and cold. "This is Victor Greystone. You think your little letter scares me? You're a kid playing at something you don't understand. Drop this, or you'll regret it." Maya's grip tightened, her pulse racing. "I know the law, Mr. Greystone. You don't scare me." He laughed a harsh, grating sound and hung up. Ruth overheard, her face paling. "Maya, you stop this foolishness now. Men like that don't play fair." But Maya shook her head. "Someone's got to stand up, Mama." When Greystone ignored her demand, Maya filed a case in small claims court, paying the $25 fee with her meager savings. The hearing was set for a Friday, and she spent every spare moment memorizing statutes, practicing arguments in front of her cracked bedroom mirror. The morning of the hearing, she dressed in her best outfit, a thrift store blazer and skirt, her braids swept into a tight knot. Lena shuffled beside her as they entered the courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled of mildew and despair. The courtroom was half empty. A few bored spectators slouched in the pews, but Maya felt every eye on her as she stepped forward. Judge Kline presided, a wiry man in his 60s with a pinched face and a reputation for favoring landlords. His pale blue eyes narrowed as Maya introduced herself. "I'm representing Mrs. Lena Carter, Your Honor," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Kline leaned back, smirking. "You? What are you, 16? This isn't a school play, girl." A ripple of chuckles spread through the room, and Maya's cheeks burned, but she stood taller. "I'm 18, sir, and I know my rights under Michigan law." Victor Greystone sat across the room, flanked by a slick attorney in a tailored suit. He was a broad-shouldered man with silver hair and a predatory grin, his presence radiating entitlement. His lawyer, a wiry guy named Paulson, spoke first, presenting a stack of papers. Mrs. Carter violated her lease with excessive noise and unpaid rent. He drawled, sliding the documents to Kline. "We're within our rights to evict." Maya countered, handing over Lena's receipts, but legible. "These prove she paid every month, Your Honor. The noise complaint's a fabrication. There's no evidence, no police reports, no witnesses." Kline skimmed her papers, then tossed them aside. "These aren't notarized, Miss Jackson. Anyone could have typed them up. Greystone's records show a debt." Maya's heart sank. She'd read about notarization, but hadn't known where to get it done on her budget. Victor leaned forward, his voice oily. "She's a liar, Judge. Probably coached by that kid to scam us." Lena flinched, and Maya's fists clenched. "That's not true. Look at the dates. They match her bank statements." But Kline waved her off. "I'm not here to play detective. You've got no standing, girl. Greystone's evidence holds more weight." The gavel cracked, and Kline adjourned for a week to review. Maya walked Lena out, the old woman's steps slow and defeated. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered. Lena squeezed her hand. "You tried, baby. Ain't many would." But as they stepped into the gray afternoon, Victor brushed past, his whisper chilling her ear. "Next time, I won't be so nice." Maya watched him stride to a black SUV, his threat lingering like smoke. She knew she'd lost this round, but the fight was just beginning. Back home, she opened her law books again, her resolve hardening. She'd find a way, because if she didn't, who would? The loss in court left a bitter taste in Maya's mouth, but it didn't break her. If anything, it sharpened her focus. That night, she sat at her desk, the dim glow of a desk lamp casting shadows over her law books. Judge Kline's dismissal. stung her evidence wasn't enough. Not yet. She needed something ironclad to prove Greystone's lies. The next morning, she returned to the library, her steps quick and purposeful. She found Jamal Carter behind the counter, a lanky 22-year-old with a fade haircut and a knack for computers. He'd helped her photocopy Lena's receipts once, and she'd noticed his laptop humming with code. "Jamal," she said, leaning in, "I need a favor, something big." He raised an eyebrow, sliding a stack of returns aside. "What's up, Maya? You look like you're plotting a revolution." She lowered her voice. "Greystone screwing. Over Mrs. Lena faking stuff to kick her out. I need proof they're dirty. Can you dig into their system?" Jamal hesitated, then grinned. "Hacking, huh? Risky, but I'm in. Hate those suits as much as you do." Over the next 2 days, he worked his magic, cracking into Greystone Realty's internal emails from a burner laptop in the library basement. What he found was dynamite. A thread from Victor Greystone to his property manager, ordering, "Forge. Whatever you need, noise complaints, late payments. Get Carter out by next week. We've got buyers waiting." Maya's pulse raced as she read it. This was her weapon, but trouble brewed faster than she'd expected. That evening, as she walked, home with printouts tucked in her bag, a shadow loomed behind her. She turned to see Dwayne, a hulking ex-cop with a shaved head and a scar slicing his cheek. He wore a black jacket, no badge, but his menace screamed authority. "You're the little lawyer, huh?" he growled, stepping closer. "Victor says, back off, or you'll wish you had." Maya's throat tightened, but she squared her shoulders. "Tell him to bring it on." Dwayne grabbed her arm, shoving her against a brick wall. "Watch your mouth, kid. Next time, I won't ask nice." He released her and stalked off, leaving her breathless but defiant. Ruth saw the bruises when Maya stumbled in. "Lord, Maya, what have you done?" she cried. "This ain't worth your life." Maya hugged her, voice firm. "It's bigger than me, Mama. I can't stop now." The neighborhood wasn't all on her side either. Word of her fight spread, and some grumbled. She was stirring trouble. Old Mr. Tate, who ran the bodega, cornered her the next day. "Cops been round more since you started this mess. You're making it worse for us." His words cut deep, but Maya pressed on, fueled by Lena's quiet faith. She and Jamal prepped for the next hearing, her confidence bolstered by the emails. She'd show Kline the truth, force him to see it. Friday arrived, the courtroom buzzing with tension. Maya wore her blazer again, patched at the elbow but pressed neat. Lena sat beside her, clutching a handkerchief. Victor strode in, his suit crisp, his lawyer Paulson at his side. Dwayne lurked in the back, arms crossed, his stare drilling into Maya. Judge Kline took the bench, his expression sour. "Miss Jackson, you're back. Hope you've got more than last time." She nodded, stepping forward. "I do, Your Honor." Proof Greystone fabricated Mrs. Carter's violations. She handed over the printed emails, her voice steady. "Be sure Victor Greystone ordered his staff to fake documents. It's fraud." The room hushed. Kline skimmed the pages, his brow furrowing. Paulson jumped up. "Objection. These could be forged. Where's the chain of custody?" Maya anticipated that. "They're time-stamped from Greystone's server, verifiable by IP. I've got metadata. Logs too." She slid Jamal's analysis across the table, her hours of prep paying off. Victor's face reddened, but he stayed silent. Kline rubbed his temples, clearly rattled. "This is compelling," he muttered. Maya pressed her advantage. "Look at the dates, Your Honor. They match when Greystone filed the eviction, before any supposed complaints." Then Victor played his card. Paulson smirked, producing a USB drive. "We've got evidence, too. Video of Mrs. Carter harassing staff, proof she's the problem." He plugged it into the court's monitor, and grainy footage rolled. Lena shouting, At a Greystone worker, her voice shrill. Maya's stomach dropped. Lena whispered, "That ain't right, I never." Maya squeezed her hand, mind racing. The video was choppy, the audio off-sync edited, she'd bet. "Your Honor," she said, standing, "this looks manipulated. Check the shadows, they don't match the time of day claimed. We need an expert to verify it." Kline sighed, his patience thinning. "You're asking a lot, Miss Jackson. I'm not here to dissect movies." The crowd murmured, some nodding at Maya, others scoffing. Victor leaned back, smug. Dwayne cracked his knuckles audibly, a warning. Maya's heart pounded, but she held Kline's gaze. "If you want justice, sir, you'll check. Greystone's banking on you not looking close." Kline's jaw tightened. He didn't like being challenged, especially not by her, a black girl from the east side. After a tense pause, he banged his gavel. "I'll review all this emails. Video, everything. Back in 1 week. Don't waste my time again." Outside, Lena hugged Maya, tears in her eyes. "You're something else, child." But as they parted, Dwayne brushed past, his breath hot on her ear. "Keep pushing, and you'll see what happens." Maya watched him melt into the crowd, her resolve stealing. She headed home, the email safe in her bag, but doubt gnawed at her. The video had shaken her. Greystone wasn't just lying. They were crafting a narrative to bury Lena. That night, she pulled out a book she'd borrowed months ago, Simple Justice, about Thurgood Marshall's battles. His words leapt off the page. "The law is a weapon if you wield it right." Maya closed the book, her path clear. She'd go public, turn their game against them. Greystone wanted a fight? They'd get one they couldn't win. Maya knew the courtroom alone wouldn't save Lena, not with Kline's wavering and Greystone's dirty tricks. She needed a bigger stage. The next morning, she tracked down Tasha Evans, a freelance journalist who'd written about police brutality in Detroit's black neighborhoods. Tasha was a wiry woman in her 30s, dreadlocks tied back, her sharp eyes sizing Maya up over coffee at a dingy diner. "You've got guts, kid," Tasha said, flipping through the emails Jamal had uncovered. "This could blow up." "You sure?" "You ready?" Maya nodded, her jaw set. "People need to know," Tasha grinned. "Then let's light the fuse." By evening, Tasha's post hit social media, blistering expose titled "Greystone Realty's Eviction Scam Targets Black Tenants." She uploaded the emails, metadata screenshots, and a photo of Lena's eviction notice, tagging local activists. Within hours, it went viral, retweets flooding in from across Detroit. Maya watched the numbers climb from Jamal's laptop, her stomach a knot of nerves and hope. The next day, a crowd gathered outside the courthouse, dozens of East Side residents, signs reading "Justice for Lena" and "Stop Greystone." Their chants echoed through the brick walls as Maya and Lena arrived for the final hearing, a raw energy pulsing in the air. Inside, the courtroom was packed, tension crackling. Judge Kline took the bench, his face a mask of irritation. Victor Greystone sat stiffly, his lawyer Paulson whispering furiously. Dwayne hulked in the back, his glare a blade. Aimed at Maya, Kline banged his gavel. "Order, Miss Jackson. You've got 5 minutes to wrap this up." Maya stood, her patched blazer a stark contrast to Paulson's pinstripes. "Your Honor, this isn't just about Mrs. Carter anymore," she began, voice clear. "Greystone Realty's been targeting black families faking records to evict us. I've got more proof." She handed over a list. Jamal had compiled 20 names, all black tenants Greystone had ousted in the past year, their cases mirroring Lena's. The crowd murmured. Kline's eyes narrowed, but Maya pressed on. "Those emails prove Victor Greystone ordered fraud. That video? Its edited shadows don't lie. He's not just breaking leases. He's breaking lives for profit." Victor slammed his fist on the table. "This is slander." She's a nobody stirring up trash. His outburst backfired. They don't deserve to live here, he spat, his mask slipping. Gasps rippled through the room. Kline's gavel cracked. Enough, Mr. Greystone. Sit down. Maya seized the moment. He's admitting it, Your Honor. Check the evidence. Stop this now. Paulson tried to recover, stammering about the video's authenticity, but the tide had turned. Kline leaned forward, his tone icy. I've seen the emails, the list, the posts outside. This court's not blind. Greystone, you're done here. He ruled for Lena eviction reversed, costs on Greystone, and added, I'm referring this to the DA for fraud investigation. Cheers erupted, Lena sobbing into Maya's shoulder. Victor stormed out, Dwayne trailing him, but not before. Shooting Maya a look that promised retribution. The victory glowed briefly. That night, Maya walked home alone, the streetlights flickering. She didn't hear the footsteps until too late. Dwayne emerged from an alley, his fist slamming into her ribs before she could scream. She hit the pavement, pain exploding as he kicked her side. Told you to quit, he snarled. Next time, you're dead. He vanished into the dark, leaving her gasping. A passerby found her, called 911, and soon Ruth was at her bedside in the ER, tears streaming. Why, baby, Ruth choked, clutching Maya's bruised hand. Bandaged but unbowed, Maya managed to smile. Because it's right, Mama. We won. The doctor said, cracked ribs, a week's rest, no permanent damage. But the cost lingered in Ruth's haunted eyes and Maya's aching bones. Back home, news broke. Victor faced charges, fraud, forgery, racial discrimination. Greystone's empire teetered. Lena baked cornbread for Maya, her gratitude silent but deep. Lying on the couch, Maya traced the bruises under her shirt, her mind racing. She'd beaten them, but at what price? Yet as Ruth turned on the TV, protests still raging, voices rising, she knew it wasn't over. This was her fight now, and she'd pay whatever it took. A week after the attack, Maya sat on her sagging couch, ribs still tender but spirit unbroken. The TV flickered with news of Victor Greystone's indictment, fraud, racketeering, the works. Greystone Realty's properties were frozen, and Lena, along with dozens of tenants, reclaimed their homes. Ruth brought her tea, eyes soft with pride and worry. You changed something, baby, she said. Maya nodded, gazing at the stack of law books now spilling onto the floor. It's not enough, Mama. Too many still need help. Inspired, she called Jamal and Tasha. They met at Lena's kitchen table, cornbread crumbs scattered between laptops and notes. We start small, Maya said. A group-free legal aid for tenants. Call it the Light of Justice. Jamal grinned, already designing a website. Tasha pledged to spread the word. Word of their win had sparked hope. People knocked daily, sharing stories of crooked landlords. Maya took them all in, her resolve a quiet flame. One night, her phone buzzed an unknown voice, low and cold. You're on borrowed time. She hung up, heart steady, standing before her growing team, she declared. They want us dark and silent. We'll shine instead. Another call came, a new case. Maya smiled. The fight went on.